Hi, I'm Mark, producer of Roundtable, the TV series born here in New York City at the legendary Manhattan Neighborhood Network Studios. The exchange of ideas is important, and that is why we bring to you the following presentation. Please watch.
Good evening and welcome to Single Shot Show at Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Tonight we will be talking about the meaning of success for a photographer and in general for the artist. We have here in our studio two brilliant artists of photography, Hank O'Neill and Chris Lord. Both of them are, along with yours truly, participating in the exhibition that goes on in New York right now, which is about traditional and experimental photography. And we was talking about success and we decided to discuss it a little bit more, just try to understand what it means and how you define it. Before we started the program, Hank actually said that he yet to find out what it means. I would beg the different. You actually should have very good understanding of the meaning of that.
Well, I think that when I first understood what success with photography was, I was probably about 13 or something like that with my first camera, when I had taken a little picture and my father had gotten me a tiny developing kit. And the first time I saw it actually come out, a picture come out in the tray, that was success.
So that was the first moment, yeah. Exactly.
And I mean, a picture appeared on a piece of photographic paper, and that's it started there, and it continues to this day in various forms. You know, you sell a picture to somebody and you're thrilled with that, or you get it in a book, or you have a book or something like that. There are various, I mean, there are aesthetic successes and there are commercial successes and everything in between.
Oh, so that's indeed. There are many forms and many ways, and probably the most important question is exactly that. What is the most important part of success for the artist? And for example, one of the things I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of Chris Lord, he, besides being successful photographer, actually a successful champion of photography. He actually helps other people to start loving photography and start being photographers. That's a completely different angle of it, and it's very important. Probably it gives you a lot of satisfaction to see how people who you actually almost introduced to the concept of photography and helped to get into this direction, starting to get better and bringing back those beautiful pictures from those trips that they can.
Yes, at the meetups we do have beginners all the way through people that are very successful and professional already. You have all those levels, and it is nice to see people starting out and getting interested and really getting to know the hobby and to enjoy it that way. I think that especially in America, people think of success as when you're a household name, people are asking you for autographs. There's multi-million-dollar checks coming in from all kinds of different sources and things like that. But I don't think success has to be any of that. I guess some of that would be nice, but just the fact that people are looking at your pictures, people occasionally buy the pictures, people praise them and share them online and pass them around. I think just that alone is success. I never thought that I would get to that level many years ago. It grew slowly and developed slowly. And I'm very content and happy where I am in photography at this point.
Well, probably content and happy is a definition of feeling successful for yourself in any form of activity. What about you, Hank? What do you believe is the most important ingredient of success?
Well, from from my standpoint, it's always been to create something that makes someone feel good if they look at it, or stimulates them in some way, or maybe, as in what Chris is talking about, encourages a young person to go into the field and experiment, or take pictures, or be like what my mentor Bernice Abbott said to me. Always have a project. Get a young artist and say, hey, get a project, and they go out and do it, and they're successful at it. But one thing that Chris said that I think is very important is that it sort of builds over time. And you start off here and you work up and so forth. One of the sad things about photography is occasionally, and this happens even now, is that somebody has success when they're 28, and all of a sudden they become that household name, and somebody pays them $80 gazillion to take a picture of whatever, and sometimes that's the death of the photographer. I've seen that happen. Who they had so much success, by the time they were 33, they were done.
Worn out and never
Just
and no
burned
more
out.
ideas. They had
And
course.
never seen again.
they had one trick,
Yeah,
and when that was worn out and people were bored with it, there's nothing left anymore.
and it's
Well,
that's
that's
a pity.
probably another part of success. It can be permanent, it can be static. You have to always develop, you have to always evolve. If you just stop in at one point, unless it's some very specific niche which nobody else besides you just can do, sooner or later your success will fade, indeed. Well, there are some areas of what we can call success that are sealed permanently in history. If you're talking about photographing celebrities, once you have this photograph in your portfolio, it's going to be there forever. And Hank knows very well what we're talking about. You have pretty extensive list of those.
Yeah, a couple of pictures of famous people. But I just saw an example of that. There was recently a photo auction at a major gallery here in New York, and there were 5 pictures of Kate Moss. 5. And one of them didn't sell, but 4 did, and the combined price for those 4 pictures that did was $128,000. And I think to myself, for $128,000, you can hire Kate and take any picture that you want to, and do it yourself. I mean, that's a fair amount of money.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the case of one of them, Kate was dressed up very nicely in a cute little outfit and everything, and she had pulled her dress up and had little black panties, and that was the extent of the picture. Okay, that's fine. But in celebrity photographs, it often is the celebrity as opposed to whether it's any good or not. And portraiture is hard to get something that really is reflective of somebody. And I mean, I had one that I was very lucky with that a lot of people like, with Jacqueline Onassis. And it was just because I was working with her on a book, and it just sort of happened, and I always had my 5x7 view camera set up. But that's just good luck and things. So.
Wow. Yeah, speaking of famous people, you mentioned Bernice Abbott, which probably is one of the biggest and most revered names in photography, and she's a great photographer. But getting on a level of recognition that she got takes a little bit more than a talent. What do you think propelled her to that particular place in history of photography?
Because of her ability to be extraordinary in a lot of different ways. I was just talking about this yesterday because they're putting up a show that includes Bernice at a museum in Tennessee, and it deals with nothing but her scientific photographs, which I've always thought was the most important thing she did, because it was the thing that was the most innovative. I mean, a lot of people took pictures or portraits, and a lot of people took documentary things, but of all the major at least American photographers, nobody except Doc Edgerton at MIT did scientific work. And Bernice not only did the scientific stuff that was extraordinary, but she built all of, I mean, if she wanted to do something on the top of this table or something, she would build the table, she would build all the equipment that would be needed, and she created a number of marvelous images. And the thing that set her apart was that she was an accomplished portraitist, but stopped pretty much in the mid-30s, a documentarian, and stopped at that pretty much at the end of the 50s, and then went into the scientific stuff, and she did it all well. But she didn't have any success. She had great success in Paris as a portraitist, but when she came to New York in 1929, the bottom fell out of everything. And when I first met her in 1972, she was finally getting a little bit, and she said, you know, how much fun it was that somebody was paying any attention. But she said it all came too late. I mean, she was 74. She never got a grant from anybody. She had a lot of shows and things like that. But in 1972 was not well-heeled or anything like that. It came late. But she was successful the entire time because she made great photographs. And she knew it. So she knew she was a success. And a lot of critics and people who wrote about such things did as well. But there was no particular remuneration.
I'll get back to this after the break. And indeed, it's one of the most painful ideas for any artist that, yes, it may come, but it may come a little too late.
Yes, we always.
Hello, this is Alex AG from Single Shot with another single trick. Tonight I want to tell you a little bit about post-production. There is one feature in Photoshop and many other photo editing programs that being used scarcely. That's channels. And there is only one reason why it is so. Nobody understands what it is for. Well, not nobody, but a lot of people don't. So when you see an image just like this, you are getting in channel that. And that's very counterintuitive because you actually supposed to be seeing this. 3 separate sets of color, not of grayscale. So if you would think of each channel as specific color, for example, of red being red instead of grays, blue being blue instead of grays, and green likewise, you'll find channels very useful for editing. Alright, we're back, and I actually wanted to ask Chris about his travel photography. We was talking about success being partly based on being able to photograph something unusual, something nobody else got their hands on, and we was talking about celebrities, but it's working in the same way and applies in the same way to places that are not that accessible. I mean, thousands of people taking pictures of New York, but much fewer people taking pictures of exotic places where you recently been. As I understand, you visited a couple of areas of the world. Some of them are not visited as often as others.
One of the things that makes me feel at least successful in life, if not necessarily in photography, is that I've reached an age where I can sit back and enjoy life, and I can afford to go off and see other parts of the world and do different things in photography that I haven't really done before. So in December I visited Myanmar, which is a very exotic South Asian country that is just wonderful to visit. I'm not a people picture person. I don't ever point my camera at people. I came back from Myanmar with several hundred pictures of people. The people there are just absolutely wonderful. There's no animosity or anything. If you point a camera at somebody, first they look a little shy and then they break into a big smile, and then they're all posing for you, and it's wonderful. They're really, really nice people, and it was fun to do that. That was something that I just don't do, and it was something different And I think I was pretty good at it too, because I posted a large album of Myanmar portraits in a travel group on Facebook the other day, and got hundreds of likes and comments and lots of nice compliments that I was talented in this and that and the other thing. So I think it's nice to do something new and be successful at it too.
Absolutely. And on a side note, this is a completely new form of success that didn't exist even 10 years ago. For a lot of people, success doesn't mean any more money, doesn't mean any more autographs and any of this.
It means
it's just defined in likes.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. It actually, this direct democracy, at least in terms of approval, if not disapproval of some information that we didn't see since ancient Rome.
Yes, I mean, selling some calendars and some pictures online and things does help to pay for cameras and lenses and all those good things. I happen to have an addiction to fast computers, so a little extra money helps. But yeah, it's very good for feeding the ego and making you feel good about what you do when you get a lot of likes and stuff and followers. And social media has been quite a well, years ago, before I retired and really got full-time into photography, if you'd mentioned social media to me, I would have done the cross of Dracula there and and say, keep that away from me. I'm not interested. But I decided I needed to do that about 9 years ago, and it's been terrific. I'm almost out of friends on Facebook. Like, if I get any more, I'm going to break the bank, and they won't give me any more. You reach that limit. And when Google was around, I had over 100,000 followers on there. Unfortunately, that's Google. Google Plus is gone now.
Yeah, that was kind of unexpected.
But that was a wonderful place for photographers to be when it started.
Now it is Instagram. I hope you paid.
I'm on Instagram. It's a harder nut to crack.
Everything have its own ways. I guess it's all getting used to, and I just wanted to say that it's very interesting that you were so against social networks, and now you're one of the most active on social network photographers, if not just the general people I know.
It really has changed me a lot.
Opens you to the world.
Much more outgoing and gregarious now than I was before.
Really, it changed the personality.
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's another big success in life that photography has brought about.
To personally evolve, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, that's indeed so. That's actually in many ways part of success. Success is changing you as much as you changing world when you become in one other way successful. And there is another aspect we didn't discuss. We talked about vox populi. We talked about how people, buyers, collectors react on you, but we only mentioned existence of a scary group of people called critics. So in many ways, success, at least in official art world, is defined not by how many people put likes on the work in social media, not by even how many works you sold, but what one of those few selected individuals said about your work. And indeed, it's easy to say, and we probably all do at some point, saying that I know myself what is good and what is bad, and I don't care what they say. But it's really not so easy to ignore what they say. What do you think, Hank?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I remember I had a good friend who was a painter. A very interesting abstract expressionist type painter. And he had created a modest body of work, and he was going to have a studio visit by a very, very, very noted art critic. And so he was working on all these things, and this body of work that he had created, he just decided he didn't like it. So he took it and literally ripped it up, broke apart the stretchers, threw it all in the corner of his studio, and began a whole bunch of other things. The big famous art critic came to his studio for the studio visit, and he showed him this and he showed him that, and he didn't like it, but he loved the pile of garbage in the corner, the pile of ripped canvases and broken, and said, "That's the stuff. That's incredible. That's just marvelous." And Dave threw him out. And that was literally the end of his career in New York City as a major painter. This guy shut him down.
Well,
And that's
pretty
what
easy
happens.
to happen.
And you have to be very, I mean, I remember back in the 70s when photography started to sort of burgeon, and you know that an Ansel Adams 16 by 20 didn't cost more than $300, which is what I paid for the first one that I got. And a man named Harry Lunn, who has been dead for, well, Harry died in '98, but he picked out half a dozen people that he really thought was important and produced portfolios and got them written up and things like that. And I mean, one of whom was Robert Mapplethorpe. Harry made the X, Y, and Z portfolios for Mapplethorpe. And it worked. I mean, they were promoted and all of that, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most complex moral dilemmas.
Uh-huh.
What the artist should listen to what he believes is right, what he believes is the true creation, or what he is expected to produce by his viewers, or what he believes critics would actually appreciate and listen to what they would say.
Well, in the case of Robert, though, it was good stuff. But there were some things that Harry did that were not. And we used to argue late into the night, and he was extraordinarily successful at selling things. And I used to say, "Harry, you'd sell snot on a rag if you could sell it, wouldn't you?" He said, "Yes, if it would work." So,
Well,
and,
that's completely
and
separate
sometimes that
talent.
happens.
Yeah, selling is definitely a separate talent which have very little to do with
That's right.
being an artist, but really instrumental for being one. Yeah, so we'll have a few minutes to wrap up this conversation after the break and see if we would figure out what success actually does mean. Welcome to Single Trick at Single Shot. Today we're going to be talking about switching from digital to film. A lot of people do nowadays, and if you decided to do that, either just to try or as your conscious decision to switch altogether, there will be a lot of things you will need to learn and a lot of things you will need to change in the way you photograph. But there is one thing that is very important, and you will really have to know it in order to avoid major disappointments. In digital, as you probably know, if you take a photograph, you really have to make sure it's not overexposed. Otherwise, there is nothing you can do. In RAW, white is always white. You can't change it. In film, on the other hand, overexposed image can be corrected through development of the negative. But underexposure sometimes is completely fatal and final. So just make sure that you will change it underexposure for overexposure.
Because it's spreading it around. It's,
All right, guys, we're back. We was actually having very interesting conversation during the break, and Chris Lord was mentioning an interesting artist. Would you mind to
Well,
share it?
I don't remember his name, unfortunately,
Yeah,
but
doesn't matter.
he's very, very well known in England. And if you go to poster sites and things like that, there's probably his work can be found. But he has pictures of a lady and gentleman dancing on the beach with a maid standing by with an umbrella.
Huh?
They're very 1920s, 1930s feel to them. And he does lots of work like that. And cars of that period and time and stuff. And he's sold more than just about anybody in England has ever sold, any famous artist, but he's never ever been recognized as an artist by the art establishment. He's not successful as an artist, but financially he's very, very successful, and he makes tons of money.
Well,
so how do you measure that?
So basically he have 2 out of 3 parts of the recipe. He is definitely recognized by public as an artist, because they're not just saying that his work is good, they're buying it. It's in a way ultimate expression of recognition by the viewers. No matter what you feel about the money, if a person actually reaching out for the wallet and taking out of it a certain amount of money, it means that they actually don't lie, they actually believe that this work is good. So he has that, he has financial success, which actually allows him to focus on what he does artistically instead of trying to make it to be his side job.
He can do what he wants to do.
Precisely.
Which is,
So
I think that's very important, to do what you want to do, not
I'm
what
really
some critics and other people
Yeah.
think you should do, what
I'm
sells.
I'm really not sure if it's in any way important for somebody in this situation to even consider what art world thinks of him. They can probably just be on Switzerland terms, just neutrality to each other. Yeah, but again, as Hank was talking about this artist who made himself to be completely buried by one of the critics who he offended, that also quite possible to happen. So you, no matter what, have to tread carefully.
But you see, there's the gentleman that you're talking about is making something that's aesthetically pleasing to the masses, and that's
Yes.
wonderful. I mean, there's this doesn't have to do with photography or paintings or anything like that. It has to do with music. About a critic that was having a conversation with Arnold Schoenberg, who wrote music that was not, at least in the latter part of his career, that wasn't, you couldn't hum very easily. And he was saying, oh, how marvelous this is and how marvelous that is. He says it's not all that sort of sloppy stuff like Johann Strauss waltzes. And Schoenberg said, yes, but if only I could have written such melodies. So, what do you think? And I mean, some of the most amazing things that Schoenberg ever wrote were transcriptions of Strauss waltzes that they played at concerts for, string quartets or a sextet or something like that,
Let's hope that
and
we
sold them.
still would be able to produce original works and
Well, sure.
will satisfy everybody from masses to critics. Thank you very much.
I hope you found that worth watching as much as I did. I'm Mark for Roundtable. Thanks for watching. See you next week.